it's extremely interesting, and it's great to have the opportunity to think on my feet.
Well, it's your adventure.
Yeah, right.
It's your adventure. I saw it then, and I know, even though we're not on tour together right now, I know you're still doing it.
I had forgotten that I wonder if you were the first relatively large podcaster to talk to me after everything blew up in Canada. It might have been, because like I made those videos on Bill C-16 in about mid-October in 2016. And so it was, and what was happening in your career at that point? Like, you were established on YouTube already as a commentator. Now at that point,
I had left the left, so to speak. I was still fighting for the same liberal values that I actually still believe in. I just can't use the word liberal anymore. We can get into that if you want. It's just it just becomes impossible linguistically to explain why liberal values are no longer associated with the liberals, which we both obviously talked a lot about. But I was really independent for the first time at that point. I had just bought my first house. We were doing the home studio thing. Really, nobody had done that. I really was at the front end of building a TV-ready studio. I mean, you came to that house many times, and we did a lot of great shows there. And I was building something that could have just as easily been replicated in Fox or CNN or elsewhere. We turned a bedroom into a control room. We had a proper lighting grid. We did it, all the right equipment, right staff, et cetera.
Yeah, right.
But the main thing that I was still harping on politically was free speech, because I saw the hysteria of the left. And then I started looking at Twitter, and Twitter obviously was very different at the time, but you know what it was like. You'd tweet something and then you'd look at the mentions, and suddenly everybody's going on and on about this guy, Jordan Peterson. I thought, well, let's talk to this guy, Jordan Peterson, and my studio is not ready and he's up in Canada, so we'll jump on Skype and do it. I think it might have actually been my first Skype interview ever, and then during COVID, that obviously became kind of ubiquitous. But from that point, I think I just went in on the free speech thing. It was, well, I knew it was right, but it also felt deeply important. And now,
why did you decide to come on tour with me? Because that was pretty soon afterwards, right?
You may not remember how it happened, but it almost was a joke. And this says a lot. This says a lot about you, actually. When me, and Ben Shapiro did a show at my house.
Yeah.
In January, I believe. It was 2018.
Yeah.
It was January 2018. The three of us did the show, and you were doing your first theater show that night at the Orpheum in LA.
Okay.
And we did like a 3-hour show, the three of us. And I knew you and Ben could just do this all day long. I barely had to be there. I just had to, kind of look one way every now and again. But I knew you had this big theater show, so I wanted to end it a little bit early. We ended up going about 3 hours. And then as we were saying goodbye, and we had only met in person, I don't know, 3 times, maybe that was the second time we met. I'm not even sure. I said to you, and I was kind of joking, as you were standing on the stoop of my house, leaving to go to the theater, I said to you, hey, Jordan, do you want me to come tonight and I'll crack a couple jokes about lobsters and some of the other funny references? And you said, yeah, that would be a great idea. And then I came, the Orpheum was sold out. It was the most people I had ever, I'd been doing stand-up for years, but I had never done a 5,000-seat theater. And I guess I crushed it, and the whole CAA team was right there. And I remember the 2 agents came right up to me. They said, this show was amazing. We're going to take this on tour. You want to open for him? I said, well, we should probably ask Jordan. And then you immediately said yes. And then it completely changed my life. I look back on it like it was a dream. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I really think back, I'm like, did we really do that thing? Mm-hmm. It was incredible.
Well, even at renting that damn theater, so.
Because you had no idea. Do you remember one of the things that I would always say at the top of the show? And I tried to switch it up as much as possible. Definitely not as much as you, because I felt my job was to be funny so that people would come and feel relaxed for the first 10 or 15 minutes. Then Jordan could do his thing, and then I would try to be silly with you for the most part at the end. That way it felt like a complete show. That was what I always felt, because otherwise people were coming for hardcore stuff. I mean, unbelievably impactful stuff. And I didn't want them leaving with that. I wanted them to walk out of there like, wow, we had a great time, and tell their friends. So I always felt that was my job. And I think that because we did it that way, I think something that you've told me a few times in the last year or two, that your audience now has matured with you. And I love that. That's the Jacob Blatter story right there, right? You took what was largely young men who had whatever their issues were at the time and maybe the way culture was treating them and everything else. You helped order them. They were getting dressed, right? All these guys coming up in suits. We were in Sweden and I stopped at an H&M in Sweden because I wanted a new suit for that show. And the guy in front of me I hear him talking to the cashier and he tells the cashier in English, he tells the cashier that he's buying his first suit because he's going to a Jordan Peterson show tonight. And I tapped him on the shoulder. I said, I am too. And then we called him out on the show that night. But now you've said that your audience has matured with you and now some of them are in better, they're in better relationships. They now have kids. You're talking to people who 5 years ago were a complete disaster. That's literally the story you're telling me right now. It's incredible.